Um, we are here to talk about the cybersecurity info session and the curriculum and all that stuff. So if you want to go to the next slide, I want to introduce the team. So if I don't know you already, my name is Jessica Kemper. I'm the Director of Industry Engagement for the CT team. I'm going to rattle through the rest of the team who was involved in the cybersecurity curriculum project, and you'll hear more from them in a bit. So I've got Reza with me, who's the Associate Director on the PTech team, Amaris Valdez, and Damiano Mastra. Oh my gosh, Damiano, I'm going to butcher your last name. Go ahead and say it.
Massandrea.
Massandrea, thank you. I appreciate that. I have a feeling everybody on the call knows who these amazing teachers are. Give me a nod if you know. Yes, who these people are. Yes, okay, good. So if you want to head to the next slide, we wanted to start off by kind of sharing a little bit about how we got here with the cybersecurity curriculum. So we, for those of you who didn't know, we have spent a number of months developing this curriculum, which we'll talk about in greater detail in the next few minutes. And we also launched it officially about a few weeks ago. We've had a few teachers who actually are on the call right now. Thank you, Ben Roy. And it looks like there may be some other folks too who actually participated in the 2-part training that we did, where we dug into the specifics of this curriculum. And we're really excited about the fact that we're kind of creating this community of teachers to dig into cybersecurity and think about how they can incorporate it into their existing coursework, or maybe even starting a new course around it. So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but the reason why we feel like we needed to do this is because we know that cybersecurity is a fast-growing field. And with our CTE programs, we want to always make sure that we're pointing programs and students in the direction of high demand careers. And cybersecurity is a really obvious one. We know that there are pockets of this happening in certain programs in our portfolio, but we definitely wanted to encourage more people to do it. And we wanted to provide resources for that to happen. We also know that the NICED does not have a specific cybersecurity CT pathway, but they are working on cybersecurity standards that are part of the computer science and digital fluency standards. So that's sort of the backdrop for this too. Yeah, you can go to the next step there. So the goals for this curriculum, again, we wanted to encourage our teachers to think about incorporating these modules or the full curriculum into their coursework. This is an open source standalone course. It has 108 hours of content, which means it can be a full year program for those of you who have single periods, or a 1 semester program for anyone with double periods. The way that the course curriculum works is that you can teach it sequentially, or you can pull out certain units to use in your existing curriculum. It is intended for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and the recommendation is that prior to this, that you teach a IT fundamentals course, because a lot of that is referenced throughout cybersecurity. So let me hand it off to Reza.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all today, and thank you again for joining us. So just a brief overview of what we want to share with you today, because, again, we had a longer training session over the past month, but we do want to do a bit of a crash course so that we can grant you access to this curriculum as well, and get you grounded in what all it is. So as Jessica just mentioned, 108 hours of a foundations in cybersecurity curriculum. So this curriculum is a broad strokes overview. It has absolutely some specialized aspects, but overall, please note that it is not an advanced course. And also it is not a course that is designed to help your students get certified in cybersecurity or anything of that nature. We can talk more about that later if that leads to some questions. Our goal to introduce you to this is absolutely to encourage CTE teachers, any folks who might be on the line here who are not CTE or IT teachers, but who want to dabble in cybersecurity or want to share this with their colleagues. I know that we have at least one AP on the line with us, so absolutely also to share this with your colleagues, because as Jessica mentioned, this can be a full course, this can be sequential, this could also also be teased apart, pulled apart. Some of these lessons could be used individually, independently in other courses where you may want to introduce cybersecurity elements. Our goal also, as is our goal for most of our CTE gatherings, is to continue to build community. In this case, we are very much keen to continue to collect folks who are interested in continuing to develop cybersecurity, continue to support one another as different schools and as different teachers roll out cybersecurity curriculum and start to think about different ways to embed that in their CTE programs. And very specifically, as a bonus, we are absolutely looking for some teachers who may want to start to pilot this curriculum that we're going to introduce, whether it's this year, whether it's potentially next year. So know that we're going to ask you for an exit survey to see if you're interested in really being engaged in this community and continue to stay involved with folks you see on this line and also folks who joined us for our training in November. I'm sure more questions will emerge later. So Damiano, over to you.
Thank you. So before we go to the next slide, one of the things that I just wanted to share was that this was a collaborative effort. We worked with an industry professional that led the effort of developing what went into this course, the actual lesson materials and activities, and as a more consultancy role, providing contextual direction of like, what does it mean to actually teach high school, which is how we arrived at this kind of finalized pilot product. And so what do you actually get out of this? First thing you get is access to the online curriculum, which includes 8 units that I'll share with you in a minute. And in each of those units, you get PowerPoints that are built like on Google Slides, a lesson that's been divvied up into like a starter activity, a focus, aims and instructional objectives, and then of course, detailed activities, videos, lab exercises, and other resources that you can use, not just as a tool to teach the content, but also for you to be able to feel and grow your confidence and own skills. So that way you can execute these lessons in a way that is not just exciting for our young people, but flawless for yourselves as well. Now, we also did, as part of the longer part of training, a variety of tracks where we offered different types of training. So there is available, which Jessica put into the chat, links to those 3 sessions that were specifically dedicated to training on the curriculum at a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. And so using that link, you'll be able to see myself, Amaris, and Chris, who is our lead industry expert that designed the curriculum, showing off those content knowledge and skills items in a very practical way that relates to how to use the curriculum in your own classroom and give you the opportunity to practice things and get a little bit more knowledgeable about what we're trying to accomplish. So what actually is in the curriculum though? And a base level look by unit, which you're welcome to follow the full 8 unit sequence, pull out, units to replace or add on to your own course, or, taking out specific lessons that you've always wanted to improve or do more for, will fit into one of these 8 categories. Now, it is a foundational course, but there is a level of depth in there to get them ready to get started with cyber careers. There's definitely going to be more advanced and expertise level material to be taught after this, but as a good starting point, we've got things like cybersecurity careers, ethical approaches to cyber conundrums or scenarios. We have cyber theory and frameworks, and then of course very interactive activities that follow like an offensive and defensive side of the business, as well as just how to bring all of that together in a tabletop exercise where there's focus on things like professional skills as well, like collaboration and verbal communication. And so those things are stressed throughout the activities. But looking at these 8 lines might not exactly pull out to like, well, what is actually in these things? And so what we did was we pulled out a slice of just some of the top things that you and your students will do should you choose to use the entire course, or in certain cases using parts of it. And so I'm not going to read what's here on the slide, but each of these things are actual instructional objectives, actual tasks that you and your students will do as part of the lessons that go into that. Myself will demonstrate in just a moment what do one of these resources look like that's a little bit more theory based, and then I will be passing on to Amaris to share his side of it. And of course there'll be a Q&A section at the end, but just before we go any further, are there any questions about content, modularity, or just the development format of that curriculum?
I was going to ask, in terms of as we think about like um, different programs and like where does this fit, or where can you see this being fit in an IT program? Is this, something at the end that comes for the seniors, or is this in the middle or at the beginning? I know you mentioned that students in grades 10, 11, and 12 could possibly take the course. I'm just trying to figure out if a school has an IT program in place with computer networking and some introduction to software hardware, where could this fit into a program like that?
That's an excellent question. And so the general recommendation is that this course should take place after an IT fundamentals course with hardware, software, and basic networking. It may also take place after a more advanced networking course, but it should not be the final course in a sequence, as it's currently not aligned to a certification when you would typically offer your technical assessment at the end of your program. There's certainly more directions and specializations that you can go based off of this. And so if you're thinking about like building a full cybersecurity program, this may fit in the middle somewhere. If you're building or you want to add on to your program, this may fit near the end tail of it, if it's as you described, where it's more computer support and the networking. But I would not recommend this being the last course, especially if that's when you typically and should offer your technical assessment. Great question. Okay, any other questions? All right, so I'm just going to show you a brief example of just one of the resources that you'll get. And the whole point of the way that these documents were designed is that they follow a very similar format. They mimic what the life cycle of a lesson is in a standard classroom, but they are also open in a format that allows you to edit and customize them as it sees fit by you. We did not want to take away the autonomy or the creativity of teachers, especially since we know that each classroom is different, every student population is different, and you may pick and choose or extend or shorten certain content because maybe you've done it before, or maybe you just have a better way of doing this. But as a baseline set direction that's industry approved by our partner, this is that starting point. So in that example, you can see on this screen that I have a lesson on screen. And each of them follows a very similar format. You got your essential question at the top. You've got everything itemized by minute. Now, if you're a double period class, you'll notice that most of these quote lessons are 45 minutes. So you may opt to extend, do more. You might figure that what might take one school 45 minutes may take you 90. We're not here to dictate that to you. But in terms of like recommended practice, recommended information, this is where our industry partner came together. And so what he's done is he's created these starter questions. He's created that type of motivation or hook that relates to the previous learning of lessons and how does that imply for today. We've got, the goal of the day, the instructional objectives. Now, Chris by trade is from the industry, so he may not be hip on all of the terminology we use or what's the best way to drive a specific lesson. But what he did do was able to call out the goal, the end product, and we as educators can determine whether we need to make I can statements or performance objectives. So though that is where you can get really customizable. He's identified technical skills and professional skills that is trying and should be targeted in these lessons. And then for each portion of the lesson, it's followed a type of Vygotskian philosophy of there's some part where the teacher's going to do something, okay? And in this case, there might be bullet points, guided questions to ask, things that students can do, but it's really teacher focused. That then translates into something that is a little bit more we do. Like, we're going to do this together, we're going to answer this together, and then it's your turn. In this particular example, this lesson in Chris's mind is 2 days. So the first day is a lot of like, let me give you this information. Let's look at this article. Let's look at this thing together. And then on day 2, it's going to be the you do component of like working with this template, working with this information. Every lesson is built out this way, which culminates into that 108 hours. But you can make copies of this material, change what you think is most useful for you, and then of course changing whatever like timing or format that it's presented to your students. If this is a tool really for yourself and you're going to create something based off of it, within your wheelhouse. Some people are just going to use this directly, but update it to give it the look and feel that your students are accustomed in your class. Are there any questions related to the way that the lessons are presented? Because otherwise I'll pass it along to Amaris. Okay, Amaris, I think it's all you now.
All right, thank you. Let me ask you a quick question though, because I'm looking at the slides and I'm noticing that the slide that I put there is not there anymore. Can you just double check for me real quick? If you have a different version?
Yeah, I don't see it.
It's all right. So ladies and gentlemen, what I want to do then is I just want to briefly talk about, why is this curriculum important to me? And hopefully you get to see not just an instructor telling you this, but also look at me as a student. So as many of you have, I went through the New York City school system. I actually grew up in the Bronx, in South Bronx, and me growing up there, I didn't really have too many positive role models up until I got to high school. And in high school, I had a technology teacher. His name is Mr. Mokeen. And I don't know if any one of you guys know him, but he was the one that got me into the tech field. He was the one who piqued my interest into technology. And because of him, I got into computer repair. Then I then from computer repair got into Cisco network engineering, and I got my CCNA in high school, along with certification on Microsoft Office, Excel, PowerPoint, and the such. Now, why is this important? I think it's important because, as you guys already know, there are a lot of different jobs opportunity out there for cybersecurity, and usually this is not a skill set that our students learn. And there's a lot of reasons to it, but it's usually because the adults, the instructors in this case, we seem to think that this is too difficult for them. And I'm just here to tell you that this shouldn't be the mindset that we should have. We should have the mindset of just presenting this information to the students because this is what's the current skill. This is what's the needed skill for them to actually compete in today's economy. If you take a look at the CyberSeek website that Ben Roy Taylor actually submitted to us, is actually in the presentation as well, in the first few slides, I think it is, but it's in the footnote. If you look at cyberseek.org, you'll notice that there are over 400,000 jobs in cybersecurity, over 400,000 jobs. Now, the question is, who's going to take those jobs? Is it going to be someone outside of our population, or is it going to be the students within our population, within our district? And that's usually the question that we need to, that should be the question that we need to ask ourselves. So when it comes to this curriculum here, this is meant for us to use as a guide to help us get the students where they need to be, get them prepared so that they can compete with everyone else. Not just that, it's also a way for the Department of Education to step up the game and participate in modern technology. too often, I think we stay stuck in the past and we tend to just stick to what we know. And even though we see that the technology is changing, the way that we use technology is changing, we don't want to change it. We don't want to change ourselves, or we don't want to change our curriculum. So this is helping us achieve that gap there that exists, which is trying to help the Department of Education just innovate a little bit faster, being able to offer the current technology needs for the students so that they can be able to compete. And the last thing is for us. One issue that I always had as I went from one school to another school as an SVA or as a student is that I noticed that there aren't that many supports for teachers. And this is what we want to create here. We want to create an environment where we can all come together with a common goal of learning, become more proficient in cybersecurity, become a power user, become confident, so that we can then pass this on to the students, so that they could then be able to compete in today's modern economy. So that's all I have for, I don't have my slides, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Do you have any questions for me or for us in general about the curriculum, about the objectives that we have?
Yeah, I do have some follow-up questions. I appreciate you mentioning that, and you know what you're talking about is equity and access, right? Equity and access to what we know is the driving force in our society today. Cybersecurity, as we know, is a worldwide issue, and especially going through the pandemic and coming out of this, cybersecurity is probably going to even increase tenfold. So I totally agree with what you're saying. And of course, the students that we teach, many of them, right, don't have access, right? They lack the access to these type of opportunities. So definitely getting these into the schools and providing that access is the first step, first point that's gonna basically change their life, right? It's gonna change their future. So I agree with you there. I had a question in terms of the curriculum, and is there like an online learning management system that's associated with it? Is there access to like virtual performance tasks or labs, or especially working in a virtual space right now? And then in terms of training for teachers who may come on to incorporate this into their program. So those were the three things that I was thinking about.
Those are great questions, and to answer them with full fidelity, the first part regarding like available activities and instructional labs and things like that, all of the content that has been presented as part of this curriculum is open source and therefore is free to use. We use programs like Shodan, NCAP, Wireshark. All of those things are free to download and in most cases install. So there are some situations where you will need to have a device, usually a Windows computer or Linux-based box, to install the software, but still many of them are web-based. They just work in a regular web browser. One of the things that we are trying to do for all CTE programs is develop like a remote learning environment using like Amazon Web Services to create virtual boxes, virtual machines specifically to do that. And so we're in conversation with the IIT on everyone's behalf to figure out what is allowed, what DIIT will enable, how will we provide access to students. And so that is definitely in the works. With regards to your question about teacher training and support, there's the aspect of what exists and what will continue to be developed. And so as part of this particular curriculum, there's those 4 hours of training that relate specifically to this curriculum. Those are the videos that was shared by Jessica on the link on the slide. The one that's the bit.ly link that says cybersecurity curriculum training. And that's how to use some of the tools, how to break down some of the most basic information. And then your question in the middle, which I believe I didn't lose focus of, is that we want to make sure that we're providing a level of we're providing this access to this curriculum, but it's not embedded within a learning management system to require or to inundate you to transfer all of that stuff over wouldn't be helpful. And it all comes compacted in this Google Drive form. So you can decide that I want to take these files and upload them to Blackboard, Schoology, IO Classroom. So it's an agnostic approach. So that way you can fulfill it in the format that works best for you.
Thanks, Damiano. I was actually wondering if it would be useful to show one of the lab activities.
Yeah, sure. I can.
You on the spot there? Maybe you or Maurice can call one up.
There are many of them. So
Yeah.
so for example, there's an entire section dedicated to lab analysis, network analysis for this curriculum. It's a large part of the 6th unit, I believe. And so what we've done is we've collected, again, all open source, all provided information that's easily accessible, that breaks down in directions like, how do we do this? And so this comes from a website called Malware Traffic Analysis, and it's one of those freeware websites that allow you to break down the goals. And this might not be something you post to students, but it breaks down what students are given, what they need to answer based on the scenario files given. This is a little bit more advanced, so if you're not familiar with Wireshark or how that works, you may need to go back to previous lessons and work your way towards that. But the entire idea is that like they come with answers, they come with information, and you can solve it. And so this would be an example of a program that you use in Wireshark, whereas another one might be just like a web item.
And I just also want to add as well, as Damiano is looking for other stuff as well, that there are a lot of different labs available online as well. So let's say, for example, if you want to go to Metasploitable, which is one of the software that we use here, you'll see that there are tons of online resources that actually give you walkthroughs on how to complete some of these labs. And that's really what we were trying to do here. So we wanted to make sure that all of the content, all of the activities that we included here are actually activities that you can find online for you to continue looking for more relatable activities as well. Now, when I say you can find it online, I know that sometimes you may think to yourself that the students can find the answers too, but this is more of a highly critical activity, right? So it's not as easy as just finding the answers. It's also explaining how you got to the answers, how you were able to solve, or what kind of clues were you looking for? And that's really the gist of all of this stuff here. When it comes to cybersecurity, it's not a simple copy and paste. It's something that you really need to think about what you're doing and how does that relate to other technology and software.
This is another example of like an interactable activity. This one takes place more earlier in the curriculum. This one actually happens in Unit 1, and it's about like it's like how does programming connect to cybersecurity? And so there's the link to this, so you as a teacher don't need to go searching for it. There's a breakdown of like what you're trying to accomplish and do, and then you're able to provide that information to students so that way they can engage in the content and ask and answer and articulate responses to the concepts you're trying to address in that lesson. Any other questions, concerns?
Yes, one question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the files that were shared on from the email, and if you could just guide me through the files and show me where you can find the slides and where we can find the video recording and all of that from the from the link that was shared in the email.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to pass this now to Jessica to address that very thing. So if you weren't part of our intense training group, we will be providing access, but there's a step in between. So if you weren't part of that training, which I don't believe you were, we will be providing access, but post this session, it wasn't included in a previous email. Jessica, would you want to explain the exit ticket component? And of course, we'll
Yeah,
stay on the line if there's other questions.
yeah, absolutely. So while I'm talking, I'm going to add in the exit ticket. So that's in the chat right now. So what we had hoped to do with the curriculum is to make sure that we check in with people first before they're using it. But it sounds like probably other links may have been sent around, which is absolutely fine. We anticipated that as well. So this exit ticket asks you just a few questions about, first it confirms if you want to actually have access to the folders. And then we ask some questions about how you anticipate using them, the resources, and if you'd like to continue to be part of a learning group. We're going to do some more trainings in the coming months over the course of the remaining part of the school year. So we hope to bring together people as a part of a community of cybersecurity educators. And the topics for those gatherings, we haven't really put any topics or agenda items to it too, because we want to see what the needs are of the community of learners. So fill out that exit ticket, make sure that you indicate that you're interested, and we'll stay in touch with you about the next steps. How about any other questions from folks?
I had something that I wanted to share. If I could. Um, I'm excited about just the idea of this curriculum. Not sure if Laura remembers, I think it was 2 years ago you offered the CTE uh, externships for teachers. And I was one of the folks that took advantage of that. And had an opportunity to sit with a gentleman from organization known as QED. Um, and through that externship, I happened to actually realize that, you know, folks are talking about cybersecurity, but it's also a part of our city infrastructure. Um, and if we could, one of the things that kind of excites our students, if we can help them to backwards plan. So in the chat, I pasted the link to NYC Cyber Command. And lo and behold, there's a separate division of our city infrastructure strictly around cyber and cybersecurity. And I think Lewis posted a question about, well, what can students actually do or where they could go from that? And the second or third button in there talks about, you know, different job opportunities and the requirements to actually qualify for those positions. What greater way to actually help students build career plans by actually investigating a part of civil service employment, which there are many ways of getting into it, either from as a CUNY IT intern. So we have these different pieces of the puzzle available, but we've never kind of like just draw the pathway for our students to get involved. Um, and you know, the fact of we have, you know, folks like people from BMCC with articulation agreements already available, um, you know, as a step up where Damian was talking about the commencement assessment, you know, it's possible the students can probably start to get college credit once they complete and pass that assessment on their way towards a promising career in cybersecurity. But it kind of just starts with our conversation and then where we can take it, where we can go with it. And I'm quite sure that as um, threats evolved, so will cybersecurity, so will the curriculum, um, and all the other supports that are in place.
Yeah,
Can I just, oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Nope, you got it.
I just want to quickly add something. So this was 2 years, last year, no, 2 years ago. So we had one of our senior class go over to do a tour at the Cyber Command Center. And we got to meet the staff over there, the cybersecurity operations staff. And yeah, one of them reached out to me and he was asking for help in terms of giving him tips and guidance as to what kind of resources can he use to better his knowledge in networking. And I showed that to the students. And the first thing the student said was, man, like, how is it that this guy doesn't know anything about networking? He's in a cyber command center. And I'm like, no, don't look at it that way. Look at it in this way. He's acknowledging the effort that you guys are putting into it. He's acknowledging the sweat. He's acknowledging all of the work you're putting into learning this content. And this guy is already an established career, and he's acknowledging that the content that you guys are learning is powerful and is important. And when I told them that and I switched it that way, they were really impressed and they were happy about the knowledge that they know, the knowledge that they contain and that they learned throughout the whole year. And that's something important to keep in mind, that the stuff that we're teaching, yes, it's difficult. It's difficult for everyone. It's difficult for college students. Usually when it comes to university, they learn this content in their third year in university, and we're teaching it to students in high school, sophomore, even freshman year. So that's something just to keep in mind as we're going through this, that yes, it is difficult, but at the same time, it's challenging, and our students will love you for it.
I think it's also a good reminder for Laura, Corinne, and myself that we can think about talking about those pathways a bit more at future commission meetings. We are the next few commission meetings coming up. We're talking about post-secondary pathways and labor market information. So there's a nice tie-in with that, and we can do better that at giving our teachers a sense of what those next steps are that you were referring to, Ben Roy. Anyone else have any questions with our remaining time?
Yes. I have one question. So how does this class tie into the AP computer science class?
So the short answer is it doesn't. The AP computer science exam is focused primarily on programmatic instruction and logical thinking. Of course, it's much more complex than that, but this course is not focused on the same performance-based tasks or theoretical concepts. This is more of a continuation of the preparation of a role to, an entry-level cybersecurity analyst.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can use it as an enhancement as well. So let's say, for example, if you are focusing on programming, then you need to think about security when it comes to your program. And this is the best way to get them into that mindset. It's not just creating a random program. It's also about securing the data because your customers are going to expect for the data to be secure. So it's an enhancement, I would say as well.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So I see people already filling out that exit ticket, which makes me happy. So we will follow up really shortly with you to get access to the folder. And if you want to stay in touch, we'll get you on that email list so you can hear about future gatherings. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much for joining us today.